I'm David Mintz, VP of R&D at Auris Health. I've been a 971 mentor for 5 or 6 years, depending on when you want to start counting. My son went through, was a member of the team, is now a mechanical engineer studying at Chico State. And I've been lucky enough to be doing robots professionally for 25, coming up on 30 years, somewhere in that range. Let's see, my academic background is EE and CS from State University of New York at Buffalo, and then I've got a master's degree out of Rensselaer. Okay, so what I'm going to do is talk about, mostly I like telling robot stories. So that's what I'm going to do, and we framed it around this a little. Clearly, I have an audience who likes robot stories, so I'll be happy. Hopefully you will. This is a smattering of things that I've worked on, how I see it tied in with what you're all learning. And that's both the students and the mentors, with a couple of personal stories. One in particular, which we'll get to, which is where the title comes from. Of it's fun to get things moving around and hit a button, write some software, and see something move. But there's a lot you can do with that. So we'll dive right in. So I'm going to start off with one of the things that's so fabulous about FRC that I found early on is you get this constrained problem set. You get this environment, this year's game, and the wide range of solutions that come with that. And, I found, I remember, I think it was probably Michael who was explaining it all to me. And I sort of said, wow, that's what I've been doing for years and wish I had figured out an opportunity to do it in high school. So the constrained problem we're going to start with is nuclear reactor containment vessel weld inspection. So this was my first paying gig out of school. I worked for a company called Babcock and Wilcox Nuclear Power Inspection. They were... And so what happens here? You've got this giant metal pot that's about, see, I converted, I was good. It's 13 inches thick, which apparently is about 0.3 meters. And, 6-7 meters in diameter, 20-30 meters deep, depending on who built your reactor vessel. And it's also at the bottom of a 30-meter trench, and the whole thing is filled with borated water and has presumably been supporting a nuclear reaction for many decades. And so that water is contaminated and nasty. So you don't want any of the welds cracking. There's some serious heat cycling going on in there. But you can imagine it's a bad thing if any of those welds crack. So depending on the age of your plant, every 5, 10, 3 years, someone's got to go in and inspect all of those welds to make sure there aren't any cracks that are propagating. That is a really lousy job to have if you're an individual without a robot, because you can't go in there and survive. So for a very long time, people have figured out how to make machines to go do the job. And it's one of those things that get interesting, right? How complicated does a machine get before we bother calling it a robot? I've found in my career that mostly is a question of marketing. Do you want people not to worry about it being a robot, so you call it a machine? Or do you want people to be really impressed, so you call it a robot? So how do you do this? The first thing I got to work on was this thing called Aris, amusingly enough. I had even forgotten that name. And it is a brute force solution. For scale, and sorry, I have to step out of my white box. That's a person, okay? So this is a brute force solution to the problem. Say, I have to inspect a great big pot that's 6 to 7 meters in diameter, so I am going to make a robot with a ring 6 to 7 meters in diameter, and I'm going to create fixtures that allow me to bolt it to the top of the range of nuclear vessel containment, products that are out there, and I will now be able to go service all of them. So this is for, us robot people, which we all are, an R theta Z gantry style robot. So what does that mean? I can take the tip of my robot and adjust its radius, right? So that's this guy going in and out. That's this axis where we see the gantry. So I can go back and forth, that's R. Theta is I can spin around that ring, and what you can't see, like this ring, it's a giant 7 meter in diameter gear. It's got teeth all the way around, and so now I can adjust how far in and out I am, what angle I'm at, and Z, of course, is that massive mast that is is roughly 70, meters high to get through my 20 or 30 meter vessel, my 20 or 30 meter trench, and still keep the top dry. And all done with the kind of motors and controllers you can get circa 1972. Controlled by a PDP-11 computer, all written in assembly language, all documentation of which was lost, and the egghead who said he had a controls background was handed the, rumors are 10 years ago this thing went about 3 times as fast. It's not doing that anymore. Can you figure it out? That was a lot of fun. I got to reverse assemble all of the code, try and figure out the control loops because, I'm a fancy controls guy, so therefore all the problems are math. Well, that was a wasted 3 months because it turned out the actual problems were several of the potentiometers on the amplifiers had moved, and this motor, which is bigger than me, was fighting that motor. And when I finally solved it, it was a screwdriver adjusting a pot till the really annoying noise in the control trailer stopped, which had signaled that they were no longer fighting each other, and then it all went twice as fast. But that was like 6 months of work to find that damn screwdriver, excuse me. Seriously a robot, right? Now, the trig that you need to do to get the head of that thing to, say, scan a circle around a pipe, like everybody in this room has taken enough math, even if you're a freshman, you might need a little bit more hand-holding to do that, right? I got, how do I get from here to here, controlling these 3 degrees of freedom? And now how do I expand that out to create a circle? Serious mechanical stuff, math, but straightforward math. And you could stuff it into one of these computers. What was the fun job I got to do after that was they didn't want to do that anymore. It was, let's replace this thing, something that doesn't take 3 days and the use of the gantry crane to install in a vessel. And oh, by the way, isn't a one-of-a-kind thing that if, the tractor trailer driving it gets in an accident, we're all out of business. They never talked about that, but I now realize that was very real. Risk. This thing called Ursula, which is much more self-contained. The idea was create a much more self-contained device. So that thing's about 6 feet tall by 6 feet long, depending on the arm. Had all of its compute power on board in that big blue a box at the back. Yes?
Around what year did they start using Ursula?
So Ursula was 1994.
Thank you.
And so the idea here was kind of submarine-ish, right? So it's neutrally buoyant, but now we have a sixed-off serial chain manipulator, right? So now your math starts getting a little bit interesting, right? It's not as straightforward as everything is orthogonal and easy trig. Starts to get to be interesting math. It's it had suction cups to suck onto the side of the wall. And it could change tools underwater. What is on the head of the device, here and here, was different for the different jobs. It had the inspection head for inspecting those welds, which was the primary job, but now this thing has to get from one spot in the vessel to the other. And if we had to go get the crane attached and move it, that's not good. The crazy idea, which I wish I had come up with, but was fun enough to work on implementing, was you would drop the inspection head off, switch to your other suction cup head, suck that on, release the feet of the main body, and now you invert the math on the arm and use the tool head to move the base, and it would inchworm its way around the reactor vessel. So that's suction cup tool head for locomotion. But then the thing is, now I'm no longer fixed to the top of, I'm no longer anchored to my reactor vessel. And one of the things you need to do is when I come back 10 years later, that little crack that I saw 10 years ago, I have to go back and look at it and see if it's grown. So I have to know where I am in the global reference frame. And so here we actually wound up using stuff that's for deep sea diving, oil rig situations, where you actually set up ultrasonic sort of pings, so not transducers, but emitters, in those same bolt holes that the old robot would have used for mounting, and then a receiver on the robot itself, and I could go ping, measure the sound, the time it took to get there, ping, measure the time, ping, measure the time, and now we're back to that freshman trig of I know that time on all three, and you can figure out where you are in this global space. And that's how we could relate the data. I'm going to go way over. I enjoy this too much. Okay, so that was some early stuff, and I thought it was actually fun to have a story that I haven't told a shoe before, because I've been talking at them for 15 years, and I don't think I talked about that before. So another thing that happens in FRC, and particularly with some of the high-performing teams that I've gotten to hang around with, that is really similar to the work that I've gotten to do, is this idea not just of making something work, but, hey, if it breaks, we'll go fish it out and we'll debug it and keep going, which, by the way, was a little bit how the nuke power industry was. Like, the risk there was, oops, it'll cost you an extra day. And we were willing to take that risk. So sometimes stuff broke and it took us an extra day, and people were annoyed, but we still got hired back. I've moved into medical robots almost exactly 20 years ago now. The stakes are different there. And so I'm going to tell a couple of stories here about that first use. What do you do? What is it like when you have built something that's supposed to operate on people the first time? There we go. Let's see. Oh, was I? Okay, there we go. So I've had the opportunity to do this a couple of times. I took, does anybody know Intuitive Surgical, the Da Vinci robot? Is that, something that people, familiar with? I was lucky enough to be part of that company pretty much at the beginning, and was in charge of one of the subsystems when we took it for its first human use, and in this case, the clinical trials to support the 510K, where we brought the system to Mexico City. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. I also took a robotic colonoscope to first human use in Germany, a tissue expander, which isn't a robot, but is complex electromechanical system that's pretty cool, and you can ask me about some other time if you run into me. And then most recently at Auris, the work we did, I actually got to do with Travis, bringing that system to Costa Rica, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. So, first human use. The original version of this presentation had like 6 of these slides. I'm sparing you the majority of that. The main thing to think about here is this shouldn't look radically different from some of what you're learning. There's processes, there's steps, there's things you have to go through. It's also meant to make you, hopefully, feel a little bit warm and fuzzy, that we don't just like take prototypes and go work on people and see how it goes. So there's steps here that over the years have been learned to be consistent in what it takes to be excellent when you get there. And you're learning about that through FRC, again, 971, fabulous place. They have over the years figured out best practices that say, if you do this, if you do that, you hold your batteries like this, not by the cable, right? That is a best practice that the good teams know, they teach, you follow. That's what the FDA is doing for us, right? FDA doesn't actually know how to make things safe. Engineers know how to make things safe. The FDA puts best practices in place for if you document it this way, you are unlikely to miss anything. That's what's going on here. So we followed those rules. So what is the Da Vinci surgical system? The Da Vinci surgical system is a teleoperated, we all know what that is. I didn't when I first heard the word and interviewed there, because like that wasn't so much of a thing. It's a teleoperated surgical device. So you've got a bed, the patient lies there, you've got instruments that are really mechanically designed to do the task you want to do, but in this case, kind of hard for a person to control directly. So then there's a surgeon console, gives you a 3D view inside the patient, and a fancy 3D joystick so that you can convey your intention, your user interface, to the computer, and then a whole bunch of math to take that surgeon's intention and turn it into what those tools are doing without the surgeon having to figure any of that stuff out. Because like we're good at that stuff, the surgeon is supposed to be good at anatomy. And that's what this is all about. And you know, electronics for the video, etc. What's the problem that we were solving? Minimally invasive or laparoscopic surgery. It's fairly common. They figured out in the mid to late 80s that there's lots of, you know, when you go do surgery, the idea is there's something inside that we as a species have figured out. If I cut that out and sew those two things back together, this sick person winds up better. And as a species, we figured that out by figuring out how to cut somebody open wide, go in there and do it with our hands. Well, some of those tasks are simple enough that if you're skilled, you can do it with some straight sticks and a video camera. The problem is this is what it looks like. The human interface here is a mess. And so what happens is this surgeon, their highest skill is no longer the anatomy, no longer the medicine of what to cut and what to sew back together. Their highest skill is more mechanical. It's more craftsmanship. It's more, I know how to move right when I want I know how to move right when I want the thing on the screen to go left. I know how to twist when I want the knot to go. And so we're, in many ways, using their brains wrong. Because how'd they get to be surgeons? Not because they were the most dexterous person in high school, because they were the best darn students and they understood how this crazy machine of ours works. And then the ones who are also good at dexterity get to be surgeons. So intuitive was a lot about how do we get them back to the medicine? How do we get them back to doing those tasks? So what do? We give them 3D immersive vision because, at the end of the day, we're all pretty good at this, right? Like I can open up, I can put it down, it goes exactly where I want. That was simple. Doing that with like 2 sticks in 2D vision, it'd be a half-hour task, right? So we give them 3D vision and then intuitive motion. And what is that? That is whatever my hands are doing with those fancy 3D joysticks with respect to the camera. So again, robot world, that's a transformation matrix, or maybe you've taken a computer graphics class. Whatever this matrix is doing with respect to the matrix of my eye, I make the tool do with respect to the camera. Again, it's actually pretty straightforward math. You just need a good enough computer and get all your signs correct and your gear ratios correct. And then now that surgeon who used to be trying to figure out, do I go right, left, up, down, build that in, just goes, I want that. And I'm going to throw a stitch. So this is what it's all about. You make the tool that can do the job at the surgical site. You make the interface you magically wish the surgeon could do, and you connect it with motors and software. And it was pretty much a miracle 20 years ago. So we're talking about first human use. This is a really interesting thing that, or at least interesting to me. We'll see how you guys all think about it. There's a lot of how does this go? What do we want the experience to be like? That is really hard to figure out without doing it for real. And you also have to prove to people. And so you have this balance of how close to a shipping product do I want to be when I go let a surgeon have that experience. And I've been working with similar group of people for a long time, and we have a philosophy on this that works pretty well. So number one, it's not even part of a philosophy, it's just there, but it's worth repeating, which I do over and over again. You can ask any of the Auris employees, they get a little sick and tired of it. But like, safety is just assumed, right? That's part of that flow chart I showed you. This thing was safe. This thing has to be safe. You want, if your mom gets sick and you're the engineer on this project, you want to hope it is available to use on her. And if you're not there, you're not ready to go to first human use, right? You're not going to figure out if your robot works. You're going because you believe that somebody's mom is better off because your stuff just showed up. Took me a little while to get there. I was really into how cool robots were, and I want to figure out if they work. But does everything have to be done? Does this have to be done in such a way that I could install it in a hospital and walk away for 7 years and not service it? No. There's a lot of work there. You got to do it to sell something. But where I love these pictures are exposed cables, capped on tape, springs. I got exposed motors and cables out there. This is not a product. How did I know this was safe? I and a team of 10 engineers got up at 5 in the morning every morning and put it through 3 hours of tests and then sat there and made sure nobody messed with it. We have anything familiar here? I've seen this happen in the 971 pits. It's not just that you check it out, but then somebody sits there and makes sure nobody touches the darn thing. I'm like, wow, it's the same. And we sat there and made sure it was good, and then it went through the surgery, and then we did an hour of tests in the evening, got some sleep, and got up and did it again. So it was safe. We had the processes, we had the procedures, but we didn't have to have a product. What did we do? We did roughly 230 patients. This was randomized where, like, you know, a given patient would show up and either be a robot patient or a manual patient. We had to do originally it was designed as a multi-center trial, but we did not have multiple of these robots. So we talked to the FDA and convinced them that instead of a multi-center trial, we would be a single center and we would fly in surgical teams from around the world that would use their methods and techniques at a single site where we could get lots of patients. So this was done in Mexico City. This was not done in Mexico City so that we could hide from the FDA. That's kind of a common misconception. This was done in Mexico City because there are a lot of sick people who don't have the money to get procedures done, and you show up saying, it's safe and we will pay for your procedure, and you get patient volume, right? For them, that is a wonderful trade-off. They get to get their surgery done. Turns out we get the sickest of the sick, which is hard, but in exchange, yes, this is a new thing, right? You can imagine, we put the same thing in Houston. It's where everyone's got insurance. It's a lot harder to get people to line up to do this new thing. So we go down there, we get to treat a bunch of people who would not have been treated otherwise. We do 2 different procedures. We had the home team, from that hospital. We flew in folks from, I believe it was Seattle and Oregon, and then also a team from Europe, from Belgium. And the result was, we compared favorably to the manual technique and got the first 510K on our shipping robotics system. So where are we on that? This is where that personal story comes in. What were my responsibilities in this? I was a long way away from a VP title at the time. I was doing, using that controls background. I did the gravity compensation of those masters, right? You can imagine that I'm a surgeon, I'm driving around holding these things. I don't want to be carrying their weight. But again, we've seen some of this, in the robotics world. It's pretty straightforward. But it's a robot. Like, you don't have to feel its weight in any given position. You can say, I'm going to send this much torque to these motors and hold it up. That's cool. But because of that, I got to talk to surgeons a lot. Because this is the interface, and they would sit down and I'd go, how's that feel? And they would say, well, bluntly, that sucks. And I'd have to figure out what that meant and go change something to hopefully be better, and did lots and lots of that. The other thing that I did was a lot of the safety algorithms around, again, you can imagine, has anybody had a motor run away on them in FRC, something you turned on and it skittered across the room? That'd be really bad in this situation. And actually, in the process of coming up with those algorithms, destroyed lots of one-of-the-kind robots and said, wow, I'm glad we don't think we're done yet. And so we have lots of algorithms there where you have multiple redundant sensors, right? So that this is the one that I'm servoing off of, usually an encoder. And this is the one that I'm checking to make sure I am where that encoder thinks I am, so that if magically an encoder wire gets cut, my motor doesn't run away. And There are ways to position those things where the algorithm development is simple. Our mechanical engineers did not pick those ways. They picked the other ways that could check more things with fewer sensors, but it made for lots of algorithm development work, which both gave me headaches and employment. But I was pretty deeply involved with that. Between those two experiences, I got the opportunity to train those 4 physicians on how to use the system. And it was kind of the said out loud part of the job was, hey, David, you're the one who's been working with them on what it feels like and what not sucking means. And so you can tell them how that works. The other part was, hey, David, you've been making sure this thing is safe, so you've got the answers if they get nervous and you can answer them. So I was playing those 2 roles, and to be honest, it changed my life. It certainly changed my career because I found I really liked doing that. And part of this is Dr. Carbajal here at the left, and yeah, that was me, a lot younger. And you know, he had a little. So I spent about 2 weeks working with him, training him up, helping train the staff. I was actually down there with Tracy Morley, who's a mentor. I'm blanking on which team she's up. Meets at the Cisco campus. She's running around here today. A great friend that I've only just met again because of FRC. And the very first patient that we were going to do, right? You can imagine, like, there's a lot of butterflies in the stomach there, a lot of nervousness. We'd been setting up for this, you know, this program we've been working on forever. The whole company's depending on us. The investors are depending on us. Yeah, you can hear I'm using all the wrong words, you know. And then there's this person on the table, and she's not under anesthesia yet. And Dr. Carbajal says, David, I'd like to introduce you to my head of nursing. And he was not talking about one of the people standing around. His head of nursing, literally, sorry, goosebumps, it works on me every time. His head of nursing is lying on that table, and he says, David, before she goes under, I need you to take her hand and tell her it's going to be okay because you made it that way. Okay? And I'm like, she doesn't speak English, does she? And I'm literally like trying to run away and trying to be there for that person who's got, I showed you that robot, right? It wasn't pretty yet. It's kind of towering with wires hanging. It's like what we all dream about if we have bad nightmares about robots. And it's sitting there right next to this woman. And he's asking me to be part of making that part better as she goes to sleep. Did it, didn't pass out, didn't throw up. That's bad. They frown on that in ORs, but it seemed like a distinct possibility. And of course, things went great. Like, that was not the one time the weird thing that we hadn't anticipated happened. By the way, 20 years later, that weird thing still hasn't happened. The system's doing well. And yes, when I interview candidates coming out of that company, I do ask, is that code still there? And so there's a little piece of what I did still in there. And it went great. And that night, we're out and drinking some fine Mexican tequila, which is a thing. You'll learn about it in many years. And he, hands me that drink, and he looks me in the eye, and he goes, "It's not just about the robots anymore, is it, David?" And hooked. Been med device ever since. I don't understand why. Yeah, that's it. It's about patients. It's about people. And what you guys are learning can go affect lives. I'm like, oh, wow, okay, I got plenty of time. Right, I'm 1:30? Yeah, okay. 2:30. Right, but I've got another Okay, so what have I been up to since then? Here at Auris, we have a number of things going on. The stuff we started in didn't work out, so we're not going to talk about that. Fun stories there. But then the next thing we did was in flexible endoscopy, and specifically, flexible endoscopy, which is taking flexible devices with little cameras on the end and going through natural orifices. So think, mouth, nose, there's a couple of orifici on the other end of the body, and you go in and you look around and either do diagnoses or treatments in a minimally invasive way. You don't have to cut any holes to go find out what's going on. And there's lots of procedures done this way. But it's pretty hard. You're grabbing hold of a snake and trying to, or you're grabbing a hold of like a garden hose and you're trying to push it. It's hard. So we thought robots might be able to help with that. And then you got to figure, but there is still this, it's not just about making a cool device. It's about doing something useful in the clinic. So we started in lung cancer. I'll talk about this real briefly. Again, I decided to include this because, look, numbers and charts and math, right? Like, you don't have to use the skills that you're developing on gear ratios and inertial models and eigenvectors. There's actually, this is all done by the marketing side of the team, figuring out what problems are worth solving, what's really going to affect patients. Turns out lung cancer kills more people than the next three combined. Pretty good problem to try to solve. As a matter of fact, if you just take a little nibble out of that, you don't have to solve the problem. You just got to move the needle. Thousands and thousands of people live longer. That's a good reason to get up in the morning. So how do you affect it? Well, it turns out there's data that tells you. Find it really early. This is actually a good example in data visualization, because it's not super obvious why this chart says that. But all the doctors nod their head very quickly, and I don't describe it very well. But the answer is, if you, and that's where something's missing, if you find out, this is when most people get diagnosed, what stage the cancer is at. And that's how many survive a long time when you get diagnosed there. I get diagnosed here, you survive well, but it's not happening. So how do we make that happen? That's kind of the problem we're after. This is a little bit about that pushing of the snake. I have removed most of the Icky videos. I do surgery. I have lots of Icky videos. This one, hopefully I drew the line well. This is actually what they're doing. They've got this snaky thing, and they're down inside the lung. That's what the inside of your lung looks like. But look at this sort of workflow mess, right? You've got, in this case, the primary surgeon who's done something slightly, who's holding it there, has an assistant who's actually doing the driving. That's actually not so common, but probably what's happened in this video is he drove most of the way there and handed it off, but his hand is still right down here. Nothing can get pushed in or pulled out, but has turned the steering over, and you got somebody else putting the little grabby thing that's supposed to go get a piece of tissue. So this is about diagnosis. This is, and this is part of why all those diagnoses happen so late, is you get a scan, a CT scan, and they see some little gray spot that's not supposed to be there. And like 20% of the time, and to be honest, I don't really know that number, but it's a relatively small but not minuscule percentage of the time, that thing's cancer and is in the process of killing you. But it's really early and it's not doing it aggressively. And all the rest of those times, it's pneumonia you had as a kid, or some stupid piece of sawdust that you breathed in and the lung took care of. It just created some, and the way you figure out, not a big deal, old stuff, or killing you, we better get that out of you, is you go in and you take a piece and you stick it under a microscope and you go, normal cells are weird cells, and pathologists are very good at that. But you gotta get a piece. It's hard to do. So there's a bunch of ways of getting a piece. And you get different percentages of knowing that you got there. I always start my story on the bottom line, which is, so flexible bronchoscopy, and there's all kinds of ways of helping you know where you got there, but that's what we were just looking at. And the advantages of flexible bronchoscopy is really low complication rates. A pneumothorax is popping of a lung, hole in the side of the lung. It's like a balloon. Bad idea. We can all figure that out, right? Bad pneumothorax is one that would require a chest tube, i.e. a way to drain all that and help you out. Hemorrhage, bleeding, right? So those are all bad things. They're not horrible, but it's a bad day. It's a bad week for kind of everybody involved. But, and this like boggled my mind when I heard it, is that, but the problem is if you go in with one of those flexible tubes, does that work out to? A little bit better than 50% on average, you actually get the job done. I actually find out you do or do not have cancer. So that means when tails comes up on the coin, it's, sorry, you went into the procedure, we put you out, we stuffed the thing down your throat. I'm sorry, I don't know. And so then what do? This one also boggles the mind. Why don't you come back in 6 months and we'll see if it's grown? Who's sleeping well for that 6 months? Right? Or if you've been smoking a lot, it's odds are it's a problem. Let's operate. 30% of the time when they do that, the answer is, congratulations, you didn't have cancer. I still have 30% of your lung. But you don't have cancer, and we know it now. So I want to fix that, right? So what works better? It's called transthoracic needle aspiration, TTNA. I don't call anything like what it is. This is stick a needle in your lung, right? So I come in from the outside. I have you on a table. I have advanced imaging. I see the little gray spot that we're worried about. And I stick a needle in the side of your chest, because that sounds like a good idea. And I suck that piece of tissue out. Let's see if we can figure out the repercussions of that. Oh, it works really well. 90% of the time, I get to find out, like, because it's pretty easy to hit the gray spot. Not surprisingly, I just stuck a needle in your lung. 15% of the time, that doesn't work out so well. So they try not to do it. There's actually also economic reasons they don't do this. So how do you get both? Well, let's see if I can get my video to play right. What do we have? We have a little robot snake. It's a 2-section snake. There's one on the inside and one on the outside. The outside provides support. And yes, the doctor drives with an Xbox controller. This is one of those examples of product versus good enough. We went to first human use with an Xbox controller. We put our safeties together. My favorite example of that, this is very FRC, is one of the things that's dangerous is what happens if the doctor drops the controller and the joystick that's controlling the device lands on the ground and the thing runs away. Like, that's a real problem. How did we solve this for first human use? We measured the height of the table to the floor, and zip tied the cord 6 inches shorter than that and made sure there was nothing for it to hit, and then proved that when I was driving and dropped it, it swung and dangled and the robot did not move. Good enough for first human use. Engineers standing around to make sure nothing worse happened. It's not product. I'm going to play that again because there's actually some pretty cool stuff in here that I talked over. Let's see if I can, crud. There we go. Okay, so now we have taken bronchoscopy and we've turned it into a first-person shooter, right? So our doctor is driving along, and instead of all this sort of weird moving, and remember, if I twist this knob, that happens, I look, I steer, I progress. I look, I steer, I progress. And then and the thing is, they're actually pretty good at that already. But because I have a 2-stage device and both of them are controllable, I can get further out. That doctor had never seen this before. The final 1/3 of this procedure is actually done blind. And so now they get to drive out there. They get to get their sample. We actually made a pretty cool needle too, that gets that piece of tissue from the little gray spot. Or from what we think might be the gray spot. Now you can go, oh, the guy with the microscope said the 3rd sample had weird stuff in it. He uses a different word, but weird stuff works. And so what you saw is because they're out there able to see, said we're going to go back to the little hole where we took the 3rd sample. We're not going to dig at samples 1 and 2. We didn't get anything. 3, we got something interesting, and now they can go in and do it. That's what Travis was doing with me down in Costa Rica. Sorry, they go in with a grasper, and this is manual, and they dig out more tissue so they can get a good tissue sample and enough volume of tissue because that is a good question. The woman in the room who's looking through the microscope telling us if it's weird stuff, that's not enough to say cancer or not cancer. That's enough to say standard lung tissue or something weird. That something weird could be an infection, it could be the cancer, it could be scar tissue, but I can tell it's weird. That means I'm at the little gray spot. And so then you want to go get more of it so that you can send it to pathology to do all their full range of testing so we can figure out treatment. So what did that look like? Well, that worked out pretty well for us as well. In this case, it's a much lower safety profile. In other words, less scary stuff going on. So we did 15 patients in this case. We got a very good yield, depending on how the statisticians do it. Somewhere in the high 70s, low 80s. And nothing bad happened. And we were able to use that to support getting our 510K on that device. But again, I've got an Xbox controller, and I didn't even show you the crazy robots we were using. We were using a bunch of industrial robots traditionally used for inspection or semiconductor manufacture. And so that's not a product. But it proved the concept, proved our math and software, proved the mechanics. 510K is? Thank you. 510K is a particular regulatory pathway that the FDA has for devices that fit these criteria. It's another one of those flow charts. If you go through this process, provide us your data, we will review it and say you're allowed to sell this. So it's essentially the stamp of approval you need from the government for this type of device. Oh yeah, there we go. So we got our 510K. So another sort of FRC lesson. This is where, it was interesting. My first version of this, said something about like prototyping when it counts. But of course, those are not prototypes, right? I took that and used it on somebody's mom. It's not a prototype. It's not a product. Something in between. right? So I took out the prototype word, but just like here, we go through our prototyping. The stakes are lower, so it's okay when the prototypes don't work quite right. But we figure out what we really want, we figure out the specs, and then we've got to go finish the job. We've got to do it right, because we're all going to be on Einstein this year, right? California is doing really well. We want you all there. So we're going to go finish the job. That's about making a product. You make it a product. Something that you're going to be able to sell. Means it's got to look pretty. That's just the way of things. It's got to be serviceable. It's got to be robust. Got to be able to place it somewhere, and they're going to use it all day, every day, like you expect to be able to use a tool. And not worry about it, because it's supposed to be the tool. You're supposed to be worrying about the patient. We don't want the doctor in the hospital worrying about the tool. And you also have to explain to everybody what you've got in a way that they can understand it. Another skill that you're all learning, right? The judges come around, and not all of those judges understand as much about robotics as you guys do. Actually, as you do more and more years of this, you will realize more and more how few of them understand as much about robotics as you do. And the job is to explain this complex stuff in a way that they can understand and digest. That's what marketing does, right? So marketing comes up with, David and Travis and all those other engineers are talking about transforms and reliability and, coordinate frames. And they go, oh, what does that mean to the doctor? It means I can reach things they can't reach. And I can see things that I can't see. And they figure out how to get the essence of what matters to the customer across. Really important stuff. So what'd we do? I like this picture. This gets back to the same story that I was telling with Intuitive, which I do believe is one of the keys to success in medical robots, is we built the device that you want to have when you get to surgical site, not... Okay. He does that a lot. You build the device that you want to have at the surgical site, not worrying about what it's going to take for the physician to control it. Then you figure out what it takes for the physician to control it, and you build the device that you want the physician to use, and you put the two together with software and so let's see. So here, I'll show a little. So we made some sexy, pretty, and functional robots. You pop this endoscope on the top, and look, my Xbox controller got nicer. And if you drop it, it can tell all by itself, so I don't have to zip tie cords on anything. And you can do stuff like this that you just can't do with a manual device, or you're super awesome if you do it. Marketing does this to explain what's going on, right? We've got videos too that we do for these things. I'm going to jump forward a little bit. So what are we good at here? We're good at reach. That is as far as a doctor could get with a standard endoscope. That's how far we got, way out into the periphery of the lung. You do tests like this. You take metrics, right? When you guys are prototyping, you shoot balls and you put a little piece of tape on the floor to see where it landed, and you tweak some number and see if the ball went further or less. That's all we're doing here. Stakes are a little bit higher. It's all the same skills. That's 3 millimeters in our 3.3 in diameter. So 1 millimeter camera with lights and an opening to pass things through. There used to be a nasty video in there. I took it out for your pleasure. And here, what are we doing? This is one of the great things for investors. Showing the control. You move around. We can go poke the eagle in the eye. You don't have that kind of control on the other end of a manual bronchoscope. We also added navigation. This is something that we didn't have when we went down to Costa Rica. We relied on their knowledge of anatomy. Here, We have, so this is where some fancy math comes in. We actually do sensor fusion, where we take vision recognition. You guys are doing that. We don't get to place any IR reflective tape in the lung, but you can still work it out. So you figure out where you are, you use the data from the robot, and you use external sensors for EM navigation. You put those all together, and I can tell the doctor exactly where they are, and then in continuing our first-person shooter theme, I can go into a mode that says behind that wall is the thing you're trying to stick a needle into. That's all diagnosis. That doesn't cure lung cancer. That finds it early, which gives us a best chance at curing. And this is definitely on the advertisement section, but is also like a really awesome possibility about what it's about. Is we're now going to combine that with the ability to go out and put a zapper on the end of the thing, that when you hit a foot pedal, it kills everything within a certain diameter. And then again, you want to be able to see when that's happening, and you want to have a robot to make sure that all your little zaps overlap sufficiently that the stuff you want dead is dead. I want to give a little shout out here. A 971 mentor was my second hire at the company. It was employee 7. Auris has been closely tied to 971 and out of that to the FRC community at large throughout its history. The advanced development team that I run, which by the way is doing stuff entirely different of what we said, it's advanced development, so I don't get to talk about it here. You can imagine how bad that is. 25% of us are first alumni. I've got 140 people on that team, okay? We do a lot of interns. We hire those interns. If I am chatting to you, I am recruiting. And the reality is I unabashedly say we have been as successful as we are because of the culture that this program has helped me instill. I learn from these mentors every day. They have taught me what is important about building teams. I am very comfortable saying I did not know what I did not know before that experience, and these people have taught me how to get it right. We have built that team, and we're doing amazing things. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ed. I'm a mentor on Team 971. We hope you enjoyed this video. For more videos and resources, please subscribe and visit our website at frc971.org.